It was a crisp, cloudless morning in Seoul, the kind of morning that looked calm on the surface but carried an undercurrent of tension. Like a storm waiting to break. Outside the Grand Walker Hill Hotel, the air shimmered with anticipation. Reporters had gathered since dawn. Their cameras slung tight. Their breath visible in the cold November air. Television vans lined the street. Their satellite dishes raised toward the gray sky. The murmurs of journalists blended with the occasional flash of a camera. Everyone knew what they were here for. For the first time in months, Hyun Bin and Son Ye-jin, Korea's golden couple, full of fairy tale romance turned real, were going to stand before the media together. The air was electric with speculation. Would they confirm the rumors? Or finally silence them? The story had started innocently, as so many destructive things do. It began in late August, when a cryptic post appeared on a Korean online community claiming that a top star couple, known for their drama love story, has been living apart for weeks. No names were mentioned, but the clues were enough to spark chaos. Within hours, people pieced it together, the timeline, the schedules, the faintest coincidences. Screenshots of Hyun Bin attending an awards ceremony alone and Son Ye-jin spotted shopping without her wedding ring circulated like wildfire. Soon after, a notorious YouTuber, known for spreading celebrity gossip under the pretense of exclusive reports, uploaded a video titled "The Truth About Korea's Perfect Couple." He claimed to have inside information that the two had decided to quietly separate. The video had over 2 million views in 24 hours. Tabloids in Japan and China picked it up, twisting the story further, embellishing it with supposed sources close to the couple. And like a spark on dry grass, the rumor spread across Asia. At first, fans refused to believe it. But doubt, once planted, has a way of growing in silence. On social media, people started dissecting every appearance, every photo, every facial expression. They don't smile like before. Why hasn't she mentioned him lately? Thinner. Is something wrong? The couple's agencies, Vast Entertainment and Miss Team Entertainment, remained quiet. A single brief statement was released weeks later, saying only, "It's their private matter. Please refrain from speculation." That single line, meant to calm, only added fuel to the fire. Silence, in the age of endless noise, sounded like confirmation. For nearly 3 months, neither Hyun Bin nor Son Ye-jin spoke a word about the rumors. There were no interviews, no clarifications. Joint appearances. The world watched in suspense. For fans who had followed their story since Crash Landing on You, it felt like watching a beloved drama turn into tragedy in real time. Even international media began covering it. Is Korea's golden couple on the rocks? One headline asked. In online communities, the so-called Bin-jin divorce theory became one of the most discussed topics of the fall. During that time, Son Ye-jin appeared at a few fashion events, graceful but quieter than usual. Her eyes, some said, looked tired. Meanwhile, Hyun Bin was abroad filming a new action movie in Jordan. Photos from the set showed him serious and withdrawn. People read too much into the distance. The simple truth of an actor's schedule. The silence was deafening. Even close friends of the couple reportedly avoided questions, knowing any word could be twisted. Behind the scenes, their management debated how to respond. Should they deny everything? Or ignore completely? But as weeks passed, the noise grew too loud to ignore. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was beginning to affect their reputations, their families, even their child. Then, on the morning of November 9th, the official announcement came. Actors Hyun Bin and Son Ye-jin will hold a joint press conference to clarify recent rumors. The statement, released by both agencies, sent shockwaves through the industry. No one had expected them to speak, much less together. Within an hour, Bin-jin press conference climbed to the top of Twitter's global trending list. News anchors across Korea repeated the breaking headline with barely concealed excitement. It was as if the nation collectively held its breath. Chosen venue was fittingly symbolic, the Grand Walker Hill Hotel in Seoul. The same place where several of Korea's most famous press events had been held, including their drama's early promotional interviews years ago. The ballroom on the 3rd floor was transformed overnight. Rows of chairs for journalists filled the space. White lights lining the back wall. And 2 microphones set neatly at the front of the stage. Reporters from Korea, Japan, the US, Vietnam, and beyond filled every seat. Some whispered predictions, others rehearsed their opening questions. By 9 a.m., security was tight. Staff members checked credentials at the entrance. TV cameras adjusted their angles. The hum of whispered conversations mixed with a soft click of camera shutters. Then, at precisely 9:30, the doors opened. Silhouettes appeared at the entrance, familiar, elegant. Weighted by the months of rumor and doubt, Hyun Bin walked slightly ahead, dressed in a tailored black suit. His expression calm but unreadable. Sun Yejin followed beside him. Ivory blouse and long skirt. Her hair tied simply. Her face composed but pale under the lights. The flashbulbs erupted instantly. They stopped for a brief moment at the center of the stage, bowed to the crowd, then took their seats behind the microphones. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Even the reporters seemed frozen, their cameras clicking in rhythmic bursts. The room filled with tension thick enough to touch. From where the journalists sat, they could see the subtle gestures, Hyun Bin's hand resting lightly on the table, his wedding ring still gleaming under the spotlight, Sun Yejin's deep breath as she gathered her thoughts. For months, the world had spoken for them, interpreting their silence, their photos, their absences. But now, for the first time, they were here to speak for themselves. And as the hum of cameras softened, and the air turned still, Hyun Bin leaned forward slightly, eyes steady, ready to break the silence that had swallowed their names for far too long. Everyone in that room, hundreds of reporters, staff, and fans watching live, leaned in. The story that had begun with whispers on the internet was about to find its truth. And as they sat together under the harsh white lights, facing the sea of flashing cameras, it felt less like a press event, and more like the opening scene of a new chapter. One written not by rumor, but by their own voices. Silence in the ballroom felt endless. Every reporter held their breath as Hyun Bin leaned closer to the microphone. The soft hum of cameras and the faint sound of air conditioning were the only things that filled the void. Then, finally, his voice, low, calm, it broke through. "We know there have been many rumors," he began. "And for a long time, we chose not to say anything. We thought silence would protect our peace. But it only created more misunderstanding." Words echoed across the hall. Sun Yejin sat beside him, hands folded tightly together on the table. For a moment, she glanced at him with a small, almost imperceptible smile, as if to steady him, or herself. The reporters' pens started moving in unison. The sound of scribbling and clicking recorders filing the space again. "To be clear," Hyun Bin continued, "we are not separated. We are not divorcing. These stories are false. Completely false." The firmness in his tone left no room for doubt. It wasn't anger, there was only exhaustion. Perhaps, relief. He looked out toward the crowd. The rows of faces that had dissected his every movement over the past months. He explained how the rumors had begun during the filming of his upcoming movie in Jordan. "Because of the location and strict security, I couldn't return to Korea for several months. During that time, Yejin was at home caring for our son. We were living apart because of work, not because of distance between our hearts." Murmur swept through the reporters. Some nodded quietly, exchanged looks that said it makes sense now. Sun Yejin then reached for the microphone. Her voice was soft, steady, and tinged with emotion. "We never imagined that being apart for work would become such a big issue," she said. "We thought people would understand. But the truth is, the silence hurt us too." Her eyes shimmered as she spoke. "Didn't look away. As a mother, I was scared. I want our child to grow up and one day read lies about his parents. That's why we chose silence. We hoped it would fade. But silence can be misunderstood." Hyun Bin glanced at her, then reached over under the table, subtle but visible enough for cameras to capture, their fingers brushing briefly, reassuringly. It wasn't staged, it was instinctive. The room fell quiet again. Reporters began raising hands one after another. Moderator gestured toward the first journalist, a middle-aged man from a major Korean news network. "So, to confirm," he asked carefully, "there is absolutely no truth to the separation rumors?" Hyun Bin's reply was short, firm, and immediate. "Absolutely none." He added, "Please, I ask everyone here to stop spreading what isn't real. Words can destroy peace, even when there's love." Line hit harder than expected. It wasn't defensive, it was weary. like a man who'd been carrying the weight of other people's narratives for too long. Another journalist asked Sun Yejin how she had felt during the months of speculation. She paused, exhaled softly, and said, "It was painful. Every photo I posted. Every time I smiled. Someone said it looked forced. I learned that once people decide what they want to believe, truth becomes irrelevant. But I also learned that love doesn't need to be proven online." Words drew a ripple of nods from the audience. Some journalists lowered their cameras, visibly moved. They spoke about their daily life, how they still had dinner together whenever possible. How Hyun and read bedtime stories to their son through video calls from Jordan. How they sent each other small notes to stay connected. "We may not share every moment publicly," she said. "But we live those moments fully in private. That's what matters." Came a question from a Japanese reporter. "Do you feel disappointed by how quickly people believe the rumors?" Hyun took a moment before answering. "Disappointed? Maybe a little. But more than that, I understand. People love stories. They want drama. And we've been part of one. But real life isn't written by a screenwriter, it's full of ordinary, quiet days. Those don't trend online." Hyun erupted in soft laughter. It was the first genuine laugh of the morning. A brief crack in the tension that had loomed for hours. When the moderator announced that 2 final questions would be allowed, the atmosphere softened. The second to last came from a young female reporter who hesitated before speaking. "Many fans say your relationship gave them hope. Would you like to say to them now?" Sun Yejin smiled faintly. "Love isn't always perfect," she said. "Made of beautiful photos or headlines. It's made of patience. Of listening. Even when it's hard. We're learning that every day." Hyun added, "We are grateful for those who kept believing in us. Even when the world didn't." Final question was about the future, whether they would continue to keep their private life away from public attention. This time, Hyun's answer was simple but decisive. "Share what feels right. But I think we've learned that the truest parts of life don't need an audience." Quiet applause filled the hall. It wasn't the usual media frenzy applause, it was soft, respectful. Some reporters even bowed their heads slightly. As the conference came to an end, both stood up, bowed deeply to the crowd, and walked off stage together. Outside the hotel, hundreds of fans who had waited in the chilly air began clapping and cheering the moment they appeared. Sun Yejin smiled, waving gently. Hyun placed his hand on her back as they made their way to the car. The cameras followed every step until the black vehicle door closed. The reflection of flashlights fading on the window. In the hours that followed, headlines began flooding the internet. Hyun and Sun Yejin deny split, we're still together. The golden couple faces the storm and stands strong. Hashtags like Binjin Forever and Binjin PressCon trended across multiple countries. Even international outlets picked up the story, praising the couple's honesty and grace. Meanwhile, inside the car, away from the blinding lights and endless noise, they finally exhaled. For the first time in months, silence between them was not heavy, it was peaceful. Sun Yejin leaned her head against the window, watching the Seoul skyline pass by. Hyun glanced at her and said quietly, "It's over now." She smiled. "No," she whispered back. "It's just beginning again." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, washing the city in pale gold. The world would keep talking, there would always be headlines. There was noise, but the truth had finally been spoken. That quiet, fleeting moment, as the car disappeared down the riverside road, it no longer felt like the ending of a scandal but the closing scene of a love story that had refused to be rewritten by anyone else. After months of silence, truth had finally spoken, softly, but loud enough for the world to hear.